June 13th, 1994. On that night, two people were found brutally murdered in Hollywood. One was Nicole Brown Simpson, the ex-wife of former NFL superstar O.J. Simpson.
Here's O.J. Simpson breaking through 30, 25, good block downfield. He'll score.
The other was Ron Goldman, a friend of Nicole's. The main suspect of the incident was immediately identified as Simpson. What followed was several months of chaos and controversy that held justice in the balance. In this video, we'll retrace the events of the O.J. Simpson trial and examine all the evidence, events, and courtroom drama in this episode of News of the Century. The evidence in the case was clear. Blood trails with footprints and fingerprints were discovered at the crime scene. DNA evidence was collected. Later, it was determined that O.J. Simpson's DNA was on Nicole Brown Simpson's and Ron Goldman's dead corpses. A leather glove with blood on it was found near the scene. This would be one of the more important pieces of evidence. Once the deceased bodies were identified as Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman, detectives rushed over to O.J. Simpson's home. Simpson was not home at the time, as he was conveniently flying to Chicago that night. At O.J. Simpson's place, many startling discoveries were made. There was blood within Simpson's apartment. Much of it was within his laundry. On his white Ford Bronco, there was blood on the outside of it, and there was blood on the interior of the Bronco as well. But the most critical piece of evidence was another leather glove, matching the one at the crime scene, also covered in blood. When detectives called O.J. Simpson to inform him about his wife, he never thought to ask how she died or inquire after his children, which seemed suspicious to investigators. The evidence was building against O.J. Eventually, he was charged with 2 counts of aggressive homicide and was ordered to turn himself in by 11 a.m. on June 17, 1994. But O.J. never showed up that morning. He was declared a fugitive of the law. Later that evening, he was spotted on the freeway traveling in another white Ford Bronco, owned by his friend A.C. Eventually, helicopters, police cars, and media alike were all following O.J. It was reported that O.J. had a gun and was threatening to shoot himself. Every major television network covered the chase. NBC interrupted Game 5 of the NBA Finals to broadcast it. They even played it on the Jumbotron at Madison Square Garden during the game. Authorities and media alike followed O.J. Simpson to his home, where he was eventually arrested. Over the following months, the O.J. Simpson trial would become one of the more talked-about court cases in history. Nicknamed the Trial of the Century, the court made the decision to allow cameras inside of the courtroom. O.J. Simpson was represented by a team of lawyers called the Dream Team. The team consisted of Robert Shapiro, F. Lee Bailey, Alan Dershowitz, and most famously, Johnny Cochran.
And do you know the names of the people who came out?
Many considered the case to be an open and shut case. There was so much evidence pointing to O.J. as the murderer of his ex-wife and her friend. O.J. was considered a narcissistic man who controlled Nicole at every chance he got. There had been multiple instances of domestic disputes between O.J. and Nicole, including multiple incidents where he'd struck Nicole.
He's in a white Bronco, but first of all, he broke the back door down to get in before.
Okay, wait a minute, what's your name?
Nicole Simpson.
Okay.
However, O.J.'s defense team was more than ready to challenge that claim. The prosecution brought evidence, such as the leather glove and DNA evidence, into play. However, the DNA evidence was found to have been mishandled by forensic specialists.
And when you saw these series of tapes, Mr. Fung, you realized that you had been caught in a lie, didn't you?
Additionally, the glove had been found by Detective Mark Foreman, who had a history of making hateful racist slurs, marking him as a public enemy.
Oh,
No, sir.
have you used that word in the past 10 years?
Not that I recall, no.
The defense accused Furman of having planted the gloves at the crime scene to incriminate O.J. Simpson. When asked to try on the glove, Simpson's hand didn't appear to fit. This prompted the iconic phrase in the closing statement from Cochran:
If it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
Much of the evidence against O.J. Simpson was not collected, including the footprints, the fingerprints, and the blood inside Simpson's home. The prosecution had to rely on the evidence that they had. Regardless, the defense was making the argument that all the evidence was unreliable and should be thrown out because of the corruptions and distrustful nature of the police. They pushed this case as an issue of race and portrayed O.J. Simpson as a victim instead of a killer. The question of whether O.J. was innocent or guilty divided the nation.
Have you ever, in your life, been falsely accused of something?
After months of testimony and proceedings, the jury was sent to deliberate. They returned with a verdict within a matter of hours. And then on October 3rd, 1995, this happened.
The jury in the above entitled action find the defendant Orenthal James Simpson not guilty of the crime of murder.
A stunning verdict that divided the nation. O.J. Simpson walked away a free man after a seemingly open and shut murder case turned sour. The trial of the century set the tone for the nation for decades to come. Public trust in law enforcement diminished, and soon protests and riots were conducted following every controversial arrest. Many believed that O.J. Simpson got away with murder that day. Many believed that the line between corrupt and honest police was blurred to the point of non-existence. The O.J. Simpson trial was one that America will never forget. It was one of the most thrilling news stories ever. There is no doubt that it will be remembered as news of the century.